Aloha, I'm Reverend Tim Lytle, Senior Minister here at Unity Church of Hawaii in Honolulu. And we are so grateful for all of you who watch us on our YouTube channel. We know with you that as you view these teachings and apply them to your lives, that it helps to build your life into the very best one that can be imagined. If you're ever in the area, please come and join us for a service, and please enjoy the message that you're about to watch. Aloha.
And we're looking at the subject of surrender. Last week, we were looking at the radical teachings of Jesus. We finished up a series that we did on the radical teachings of Jesus and finished with the idea of surrender. But there's so much to this topic, and a lot of other faith traditions speak to this as well. So I wanted to look at various perspectives of various faith traditions and some of what they say about surrender. Because surrender is essential to the spiritual journey. And by surrender, I do not mean just sitting back and like, oh, I give up. I'm not going to do anything anymore. I'm going to be a couch potato for the rest of my life and have someone else pick up my mail. That is not what I mean by surrender. By surrender, I'm talking about a spiritual process where we no longer try to control the universe and everyone in it. The one person that we have a chance of maybe controlling if we do some spiritual work is ourselves. We do not have the power to control someone else. And thus is the source of much conflict in what is called Kali Yuga. Ever heard of that? Yuga means age of Kali. Kali, not Kali the dog. Kali hears me saying her name. Sorry, Kali. Kali, I happen to look over there and Kali's looking at me. Yeah, what? Kali Yuga is an age of dissension and quarrel. And that's where we're living. An age in which there's conflict and misunderstanding and efforts to try to get other people to change to suit our agenda and our understanding. And it creates a lot of suffering. I have found in my life that my suffering is directly proportionate to the amount of resistance that I put up in my life to what is. I'll say that again. The amount of suffering that I experience in my life is directly proportionate to the amount of resistance that I put up to what is. What is in another person? What is in an environment? What is in a country? What is in a world? If you're like me, you know that there's a part of me that is very much like an activist that wants to get out there and change things. However, the only person we can really change is ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean we keep our voice to ourselves. There are times to speak out. There are things that we need to do, and we'll be looking at that in this lesson today. But I've pulled several different sources to speak to the idea of surrender. First comes from the Bhagavad Gita, 1866. Some of my wonderful devotee friends who are here heard me talk about this last night. Bhagavad Gita 1866. Now, let me give the backdrop of this. And I know I drive Sean crazy. Sean has told me that. I'll pick this up, and then I'll set it down, and it's like he's trying to figure out, okay, what are you going to do? Okay. Bhagavad Gita 1866. Krishna is talking with Arjuna. Arjuna is a kshetra, a warrior caste. You know, the kingly caste, governing type of folks. And his family had been mistreated, abused, taken advantage of, all kinds of things, and he didn't want to deal with it. He's like, no, I just want to and, you know, this is in my own version. I just want to be all Om-like and peaceful and not have to deal with it. But Krishna was like, no, you got to face it. You got to deal with it. Okay? Have you ever been in a conflict and you want to just be peaceful and la, 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 I'm not going to pay attention. And, you know, sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. But if the conflict is something that is really involving you, that definitely doesn't work. You know, if you're in a relationship with someone and you're like, la, 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 I don't want to hear you, that doesn't work so well. If you're in a community and you're like, la, 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 I don't want to hear that, that doesn't work so well. So Krishna, through all of the Bhagavad Gita, is giving Arjuna all these instructions about how to know the true self, how to have relationship with Krishna, how to do sacrifices, how to do the things that are right for him to do. And then we get towards the end, the last chapter, towards the end of the last chapter, and Krishna's like, all that stuff I told you, okay. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. And that last phrase, do not fear, is really super important to me. In the Bible, in the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, also called the Old and the New Testament, over and over and over again, we're told, do not fear. But as a boy in Sunday school, I was told, oh, Timmy, you need to be afraid. You need to be very afraid. Because there's only one place that you deserve to go. And that would be hell. And it's like, oh, wow. And this is the good news. What's the bad? So, some of you who grew up maybe in a fundamentalist tradition can relate to that. And yet over and over and over in the Bible, with Jesus and the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures, we're told, do not fear. Do not fear, because the presence of God is there. You can release into that. You can surrender into that. It doesn't mean stop doing anything. It means release your anxiety. Release your worry. Okay, here's another directly proportionate thing. The amount of worry and anxiety you experience is directly proportionate to how little you trust God, the universe, the divine, whatever name you want to give it. Just breathe into that. Speaking to all of us here. Now, I know sometimes there is a biochemical thing that can induce anxiety and so forth. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about the all-pervasive worry and anxiety that is in our culture. If you don't believe it, watch the news and watch how many advertisements are about pain relievers. I believe there's a reason they sell that on the news. All right. Tao Te Ching. I was thinking about this recently. It's kind of hard to believe. Maybe 35 or 40 years I've studied the Tao Te Ching. This is attributed to being written by Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu, and these teachings have become so much a part of the fabric of my life, part of the fabric of my psyche, my soul, that It's just second nature for me. And so someone gave me a really high compliment. They're here this morning. Maybe they'll remember saying it. They said, "Wow, it is so amazing to see someone who leads from the Tao." Tao means the way. It's kind of like the flow. Going with the flow, have you ever used that phrase? Going with the flow is like going with the Tao. That doesn't mean that you just don't even care about things, but it means that you're not resisting. Jesus taught us in his teachings, resist not. You know, he's talking about enemies. Resist not. It's a spiritual principle. So, dot 18. If you realize that all things change, and we're talking about in this temporary, transitory, material universe, not in the absolute, the realm of God, not the absolute of absolute love, truth, beauty, peace, but in this transitory realm that we find ourselves in, everything changes. And if you didn't know that, you're in for a big surprise. Because things change. Relationships change. Even if you're in the relationship, it's not exactly the way it was when you started, because people change. And so if you continue to be in the relationship, you're changing together. And if you split up, you're changing apart. It's kind of that way. Okay? Everything changes. If you realize that all things change, there is nothing you will try to hold on to. If you aren't afraid of dying, there is nothing you can't achieve. Dying is perhaps the root of all fears. You know, most people have a fear of dying. Most people. Maybe you don't any longer. Maybe you have gone through an experience, a near-death experience, and you're no longer afraid of it. But most people are afraid of it because it feels like the ultimate letting go. And yet the real us, the true self, was never born and can never die. You can never be killed. The real you can never be killed. Isn't that amazing? So what are we afraid of? So it says, if you aren't afraid of dying, there is nothing you can't achieve. There's no fear to hold you back. Trying to control the future is like trying to take the master carpenter's place. There we go. Whoop. When you handle the master carpenter's tools, chances are that you'll cut yourself. That is, when we're trying to control others and control all of our circumstances and everything in our environment and control the universe, chances are we're going to end up suffering ourselves. Again, the amount of suffering that I experience is directly proportionate to the amount that I resist. Okay? Like on Star Trek, the Borg, resistance is futile. Some of you don't know what I'm talking about. That's okay. All right. Some of us really would like to control others. Because, dang it, we're right. And we just want to straighten them up. Their lives would be so much better if they would just do what we tell them. Ever been in that situation? Felt like need to straighten people up? Now, the hardest person to change, and the only person we can change, is ourselves. We need to work on ourselves. Again, that doesn't mean releasing from being active in our world. The Tao Te Ching has a concept called Wu Wei. Maybe you've heard that phrase, Wu Wei. Wu Wei is sometimes misinterpreted as do nothing, but that's not what Wu Wei means. Wu Wei is a form of acting in a way that feels like non-action. It's like going with the flow. If you watch a really good basketball player, it looks effortless what they're doing. If you watch a really good singer sing, it looks effortless. If you watch someone who's practiced hours and hours and hours at something, it looks effortless, but a lot of effort, a lot of work went into it until they get to the place where it's like second nature. That's what Wu Wei is. Effortless living. So, instead of trying to control the whole world, this is a form of surrender. Surrendering to what is and doing what is ours to do. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity Movement, in his 94th year, and this was a man who earlier in his life had had major physical challenges, said, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm to do those things that ought to be done by me. So we need to use discernment and wisdom to know what is ours to do. And the power of this month is will, the power to choose. And then we choose what is ours to work on. And I'll give you a clue. It's not someone else. Okay. Music of the Soul, Sidi Muhammad. That's his short name. His real name is that long. He recently made his transition. I'm part of a Sufi tariqa. Tariqa is an Arabic word that means branch. So it's a branch of Sufism. And the guide of this particular Shadaliya tariqa is Sidi Muhammad, peace be unto him. And so he says this, the ship which can carry us through the stormy waters of this world. And would you agree that the world sometimes feels like a stormy boat ride? Yeah? Not everything goes the way you anticipated. Right. Srila Prabhupada, Krishna consciousness guru, calls it the Sea of Nations. It's like this sea getting across this. The ship which can carry us through the stormy waters of this world to the opposite shore of God's peace and promise is the surrender to the will of God, al-Islam. Al-Islam literally is translated surrender to the will of God. That's what Islam means. Again, Tao Te Ching. Men are born soft and supple. You know, like a baby? They're very, very flexible. They can, well, some of you still can do this, but they can stick their toes in their ears or whatever. Are born soft and supple. Dead, they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant. Dead, they are brittle and dry. Thus, whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. The hard and stiff will be broken, the soft and supple will prevail. Another image that's used often in the Tao Te Ching is water. You know, water is very fluid. It seems, all like cool. It's in the flow. And yet rocks, very hard rocks, are shaped and smoothed by the water. So water is even more powerful than the hard and rigid rock. Again, that's a Taoist concept, that being flexible, going with the flow, is more powerful and strong than being rigid being, aggressive. Okay. I missed it. Okay. All right. Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh, Buddhist monk that I admire much. Buddhism has influenced my life as well. And Thich Nhat Hanh is Vietnamese. And so during the Vietnam War, he was trying to find peaceful solutions. In the book Living Buddha, Living Christ, he says, in a true dialogue, both sides are willing to change. Have you ever been in a discussion that you thought was going to be a dialogue, but it wasn't because one or both of you was not willing to change? True dialogue has an element of surrender to it. True dialogue means this is what I believe, this is my experience, this is what I know for myself, but I'm willing to change. That requires a big surrender. Whew. That's a really big one. Maybe that's bigger than the fear of death. The willingness to change. The willingness to change our mind. The willingness to seek peace rather than insisting that we are right. Yeah? That could be the biggest surrendering of all. We are called really to a life of peace. But peace is impossible without us surrendering. Have you surrendered? Have you surrendered to the divine, to God, to Krishna, whatever name? Have you surrendered fully? Like released? Let go? Again, the amount of suffering that I experience is directly proportionate to the amount that I resist. Surrender and know peace. Aloha.